we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Railroaders Play Railroads Online. I am your host, Casey. Floating somewhere around here in the yard is our other host, Nick Ozerak. And
Yes,
today we're going to be talking about steam locomotive basics.
that's correct. Right now I'm playing Hobo on some cordwood cards, but
That's also
I
a
will
fun game.
position. That is a fun game, but requires slightly less expertise than understanding the function and operation of steam locomotives. I am now by the water tower next to the Heisler, which we were ranting and raving about last week.
Raving or just ranting? So I remember just ranting about it.
Oh, well, I guess we were praising the merits of each of the different logging locomotives.
Well, alright, I'm over by engine 34. Figure that's maybe my favorite engine, so I'm going to be using that one for our discussion today.
All right,
But you know, I'm biased. I like the name Freya a lot.
As always, feel free to submit your questions that you may have as they come up.
Yes. Squiggy and Hostler, there is a train at the oil field not oil field, ironworks to run back, and all of those cars need to get parked on top of the caboose on departure 2.
Copy that.
And then Nick, you and I will be heading out to the iron ore mine.
Wonderful. That's always a fun trip.
Oh, I'd love that trip.
So to clarify, train going from the ironworks to
Ironworks to Hill Valley, and
Hill Valley.
there's already a caboose on departure 2, so those cars will just need to get put on top of that caboose. It's going to be heading southbound out.
Okay.
All right. So the steam locomotive, wonderful, beautiful piece of machinery that it is incredibly simple and incredibly complicated all at the same time. In its essence, you put a fire in here in the firebox, and it boils water in here in the boiler, and that steam goes here to the pistons, which moves the wheels, and there you go. That's how a steam engine works. We're done, right? That's it? We're done for the night? We can just play trains? Everyone cool with that? We hit it all?
Say there's more to it, but okay.
Just a little bit
I
more
mean,
to it.
from a run and gun standpoint, I think we covered the bases.
No, there's a lot. So the game's not perfect simulation yet of how a steam engine works. But all the parts are there. Right now the game kind of treats it as a diesel engine that's powered by steam. Throttle makes it go, and that's really it. So some of the nuance is missing, which talking with one of the devs I know is a planned thing to add more of that nuance. But all of the pieces are still there and we can still talk about them. Oh, and I just realized there's washout plugs on the side of the model. That's awesome. For those of you who don't know, those little plugs right there, those are when the boiler's cold and there's no pressure, you can open those up, and you need to wash out the boiler every 31 days to get the scale out. Never realized those were modeled into those were on the model before. That's pretty cool. Any rate, so we gotta get our fire going, start making steam. So huck a bunch of wood in there.
Now, if you were truly firing this up from cold, because you've got embers, so there's presumably some heat already. But if there was absolutely zero heat in the firebox, you would be starting to build your fire with lit newspaper or something akin to that, essentially.
Yes, but on a bigger scale. Kind of small logs of wood. Newspaper, what we in the industry like to call go juice. And it's usually any oil remains that are, or anytime you spill oil in the shop, you soak it up with wood chips, and that ends up in a bucket. So you heap a bunch of that in the firebox, and then you're using lighting a rag on fire and tossing it in and getting all of that going. And it takes about, on a moderate-sized tourist engine, I'm talking large 282 or large 280, small or a small Mikado, about 6 hours to get up to boiling. And that's starting at a boiler that's where the water is about 160 degrees already. So that's obviously not modeled in game. I just threw wood in. My fire is already at nearly 200 degrees Celsius. So that's not modeled. We don't need to take 6 hours to get this engine to boiling. After boiling, it's another 12 hours until you see pressure. Because at that point, we'll do what's called banking the fire. And it's when you put a large mound of coal in the back of the firebox and build it up to about the height of the door. So it would go from that grate down there to the top of the door. It would look a little similar like this, except it wouldn't be the whole firebox. And that would hold heat overnight and slowly bring up the pressure. So you'd walk in the morning and you'd have maybe 100 pounds. And if it's a 200-pound boiler, that means you need to get 200 more pounds of PSI before you can roll out of the house in the morning. So it's a long, arduous process, for sure. I think I answered that question.
Yeah, they're basically starting it and the amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's another program out there that's a simulator of the Disneyland railroad locomotives, and you figure those are really small boiler, small 3-foot gauge engines, but even something that teeny tiny can take, and I think they operate at like 125 psi or something like that, but they still take a good hour and a half, 2 hours to properly heat up.
And that's
They're
about what I'd
oil
expect
burners
from
as
something
well.
that, yeah, that's about something I'd expect from something that size.
And to be honest, like, you can fire locomotives up a lot quicker. I've known a couple engineers and firemen who've done it, like firing up 7470, 060 Canadian built switcher. They got it fired up in 3 hours for a rush, but that's not good for the boiler because then you got shock.
And what is shock?
Yes, indeed.
Ella Stara, thanks for the follow, and I guess you're saying hi to Squiggy. So boilers expand and contract as they heat up or cool down. Can you see it in here? There's no good way to see it on the model unless we flip it over. And where's Rudy when you need him? So something this size, I'd expect to grow about, I don't know, half an inch. Though apparently engines can grow up to. I've heard rumor of engines expanding 3 inches. So it starts at whatever this length is, and as it heats up, it grows by, let's say, half an inch for an engine this size. That's the not stress factor, but the did we call it stress? What were we calling it?
Shock.
That's the shock factor. You heat it up too quickly, it expands too quickly, and you could break tubes on the tube sheet. You can break stay bolts, which are the bolts that hold the firebox outer sheet to the inner sheet, and they're not modeled. They'd look similar to a rivet, except they'd be all along the firebox here in rows. And you can break those if the boiler expands or contracts too quickly. One of the railroads I worked for, they way back in the 60s, they fired up their engine in an hour and a half from cold to 200 psi. Rumor has it they put 3.5 gallons of diesel fuel in the firebox on top of a bed of coal. Like, they walked over with the hose, like with the fuel pump that they'd used to fill the diesels, and just sprayed it in. So yes, bad for the boilers.
Yikes.
Terrible boiler management.
Yikes.
Um,
Oh, by the way, I assume we're train 501?
you're extra.
Extra. Okay, so extra 30 then. Are we clear to depart?
You are clear to depart. Extra 30.
All right.
Railroad's all yours on the south end. Yeah. So just kind of going around with what we have up here in the cab. While we're getting up the steam and basic controls, throttle, reverser, or Johnson bar if you're Heist. Shout out to Heist, one of the devs. I call it a reverser. All the engines I work on we call them reversers, but they're air-powered reversers. This is mechanical, which is why they call it a Johnson bar. Something to do with like being a metaphor for a penis. I don't know. That's just what I've heard.
I don't think anybody knows where the Johnson bar comes from.
I've heard it's a metaphor for penis.
Mm.
But you know, if you know, let us know in the comments. It's basically all the way forward is forward, all the way back is reverse. And as you get closer towards center, it's like shifting up into 6th gear in your car. And you want to go faster, you move the reverser closer to center. It then uses less steam in the pistons, and is more fuel efficient. You want to go slower, or you're trying to start a heavy train, keep it longer. All the way out is long, closer to center is shorter. And because this is the 1800s, we only have one brake. It's an independent brake, which means it just does the locomotive. Those are kind of the general controls. We'll be talking more about what else is here in the cab as we're going down the railroad. But yeah, why don't we get on over to our train, Nick? We're on departure 3. If you want to get our switches.
Can do.
And engine 30, all switches are lined out of the ironworks. You're clear to proceed.
Excellent. Let's highball.
So we'll
The
give
full 17 miles an hour.
give two long blasts of our whistle to let everyone know we're moving. And I've got what's called my cylinder cocks open. That lets water doesn't compress. It's bad. So what there is these things called cylinder cocks, which, as you can see, it's spraying steam out. That lets water out along with the steam. And once you've made a couple of rotations, go ahead and close those up. In the real world, we do a thing called warming up the cylinders, where we'll apply the brake fully, leave our cylinder cocks open, and put our reverser all the way forward, blow out steam and water to warm them up, because those will also expand as they heat up, and then pull it all the way back, blow water out of the rear and steam out of the rear to warm those up, and just keep doing that until until we stop seeing water and we know that it's warm enough and we're not going to damage anything.
And the cylinders are the big round things on the front of the locomotive,
Yes,
on either side, that are right in front of the driving wheels.
That right there is our cylinder. Above it is what's called the valve, and we'll talk more about what valves are later, because those we gotta be standing next to the model to talk about those.
Yep.
And there's many different kinds of valves out there. These engines have what's called a D valve. Yeah, that way.
Yeah, so many different valves. The wall shirts, Southern.
Well, those are valve
Rod-
gears. That's not the actual valve.
Oh,
Piston
right.
valve, D valve, which are the two different main types, and then you can have different kinds of piston valves. You could have Tromanov or Trofmanov, depending on your pronunciation of the Russian word that's been translated to Swedish than English. There is, oh, I forget the Red Devil's piston valve. That's a pretty cool one. There's a lot of different stuff out there. You know, let us know in chat if you have any questions about, as we're talking about things. It's a lot. Probably gonna go over some of your heads at some points, but that's fine. We'll circle back and answer some of the easy stuff as we go.
Just get your handbrakes here, and then we should be good to go.
So now we're stopped. You put your reverser in neutral. It's just best practice.
Say, Hostler, do you want to line that switch for the main once we clear it?
Sure thing.
Some other important things here in the cab. This is our water glass. This is what lets us know how much water is in our boiler. And this bottom valve here is supposed to be at the top of the firebox. It's supposed to be 3 inches above the top of the firebox. It's called the crown sheet. I don't think that's modeled. I don't think that's in the model. But that is pretty low for where it should be. It should probably be somewhere up here on this this row of stables, or even the one further up. And those are stables. They look kind of like rivets.
Brakes are off.
All right,
We're good
handbrakes are
to
knocked
head
off.
out.
And these are throttle open. Right
I
up-
think it's.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that it's very interesting once you get beyond the basics, because for us rail fans, I think from an early age we get the base concept of tea kettle, boil water, make steam, make power. But when you get into the mechanics of it and how that steam is getting routed, let alone when you get into superheaters and feed water heaters and all the appliances that railroads developed and locomotive builders developed over time to get the most out of every pound of steam that was generated, it becomes quite daunting. I was at the not Greenfield, the Henry Ford Museum, which is also part, which also has Greenfield Village. Well, and so the interesting contrast, you get to see steam locomotives there from turn of the last century, including a rare Mason bogie engine, which is really nifty. But what I was thinking of in particular is in their exhibit hall, on one track you have a replica of the DeWitt Clinton, which was one of the first steam locomotives in the U.S. It was the first for the Mohawk and Hudson, which became the New York Central eventually. And how simple that is and how small that is compared to a Chesapeake and Ohio Allegheny, which the DeWitt Clinton is an 040 and the Chesapeake and Ohio Allegheny is a 2666. And you just look at all the external piping and if you're not well versed in steam technology, you just go, how did they figure all this out? It's fairly daunting.
And some of the later stuff is just insanely cool with what they were able to do. Just really awesome stuff. And I kind of wish we weren't stuck with 1800 stuff so I could talk about some more cooler things. And you know, there's limited in terms of appliances, and appliances are, think of like an appliance in your kitchen. It's something you use to make something with. An appliance in a steam locomotive, you're using steam to make something. So right outside my door here is our air pump, and that compresses air, which is stored in air tanks back here, and that's what the brakes use to stop. And there's a little gauge there to let us know air pressure. That's an appliance. It's powered by steam. It's actually powered off of what should be this valve, because if you trace the line, it goes to there. But it's being powered off the injector valve. The injector's another appliance. It uses steam to force water into the boiler. And I don't know. I think injectors are the coolest thing, like coolest design ever. You're basically using velocity of steam to force water into the boiler against its own pressure. I think that's just the coolest concept in the world. And so rudimentary and simple. It goes back to Venturi's principles from, what is that? What century would that even be? That's
Oh, it predates the invention of the steam engine, let alone the steam locomotive.
you're going back to like Plato time nearly. It's awesome concept. Squiggy wants to know if we're going to be talking about mechanical stokers. Probably not tonight. Since we're on a basics, maybe when we do steam locomotives 201 or 202 or whatever we decide to call it, some fun educational name and be dorky like that. But we're not going to delve into what mechanical stokers are tonight. In essence, it's a way of getting your coal into the firebox without the need to shovel it. You know, as you can see, we're wood powered right now, so we don't even need to worry about coal. And I guess that's one of the things about the game, love it or hate it right now, is that there's not a realistic firing mechanic. Running like how we are now, with the reverser all the way in the corner, the throttle all the way out, the fireman would just be pitching wood non-stop like crazy, constantly feeding that fire with wood. It would be a hell of a job. And that's where the reverser comes into play, and it's not modeled in the game. As we bring this closer towards center, this would be using less steam. So you'd be emitting less steam and let the steam expand in the piston, and that would provide more of your power versus a lot of pressure. This doesn't do anything in the game yet, so we can't really talk about what those differences are and how they're used, but it's here.
And going back to use of steam for like the injectors and stuff, I'd also like to point out the what was it called, the Bernoulli theory for when they use steam as a form of air brake system, where they would use vacuum brakes and the steam would pass through a certain type of pipe and it would suck the air through, thereby creating a vacuum through the Bernoulli effect or Venturi effect, and apply the brakes. England still uses them. Some of the two-footers of Maine, UCM, Wiscasset is actually famous for getting their locomotive and 2 or 3 coaches reinstalled with vacuum brakes. So that's interesting. If anybody's into that, definitely check them out.
Ah, yes, Bernoulli's principle.
I did not know that about Lacasset and the vacuum brakes. That's pretty cool.
So yes, the Venturi effect, as discovered by 18th century Italian physicist Giovanni Battista Venturi.
Well, there you go.
And so it comes after the invention of the steam engine by James Watt in 1788, but before steam locomotives.
There you go. And for those of you tuning in, the Venturi effect is using velocity to increase the speed of water. So I really wish I could draw on here right now. You emit steam, and this is a crude injector right here, so we can kind of look at it. This is your steam delivery pipe. Down there is your water delivery pipe, and that's your starting valve. When you pull that valve back, you let steam in through a cone pointed towards the front. I'm forgetting what the name of that cone is right now because it's been a while since I've taken apart an injector. So it passes through that first cone where the steam imparts on the water and starts to speed it up. Then you go through a second cone, also pointed towards the small end, pointed towards the front. And then finally it passes through a third cone with the wide, which is a reverse of all the other cones, to slightly slow everything down, believe it or not. And it sends the water down this pipe and into... Oh, I just fell out of the engine. Oh, we look at it on the fireman's side. Sends water down this pipe at a high rate of speed into that, which is called the check valve, which then goes into the boiler. That cools down your boiler a little bit, so you see a drop in pressure. But what happens is that it gets, the water's going in at the coolest part of the boiler, front and bottom, as opposed to rear top, which is where the water's the hottest. So it creates a nice circulating effect. The cool water moves down through the bottom, circulates up as it turns into steam, and then comes up to your steam dome where your throttle is. And that's a little kind of more in depth than just the Venturi effect that you were talking about, but it's the cycle of water in the boiler. That's how all this stuff moves around. And there were things to help with circulation, mainly circulators, which would be tubes that connect your tube sheet up to the top of your firebox, called the ground sheet, and it would pull cold water in from the bottom, heat it up, and have it bubble up over the top, and then spill back down, and create this nice circulating effect, which helps heat everything really well. Oh, everyone's favorite part, grade crossings.
By the way, extra 30 is passing mile long yard finally.
Copy that, extra 30 for mile long yard.
We are crawling.
Yeah, you got a heavy train. And Nick, here's a...
Meh.
Here's Matt. And this isn't a photo opportunity, I don't know what is.
Super nifty. For a place called Meh, it looks more than just Meh.
It's a...
I mean,
kind of
it's not as grandiose as Ahsoka, but it is still nice. That's saying something about our railroad here when even meh is not quite truly meh. It's more like meh.
Oh my goodness.
But meh was too long to write on the station side, so
Yeah, it didn't
was.
fit.
It did not. But credit to the chief architect of the AM&W for coming up with our personal Raymond Loewy, you could say. His next task will be to come up with a streamlined variant of the Mogul here.
I think he's more of a Dreyfus than anything. But, you know, we'll let it slide.
That's true. Speaking of slides and fluid mechanics,
Ooh,
I like that transition. I'm not even sure. I got the transition down before I knew I wanted to get back to what we got going on in the cab. You mentioned the steam dome. Let's talk a little bit about the steam dome and the throttle.
yes. So, up here, where we got our wonderful hooter whistle for you Norfolk and Western fans out there.
Hoot hoot.
That is the highest point on the boiler. It's called your steam dome. Steam collects there. Since it's the highest point, steam wants to rise naturally. Think about when you boil water, the steam rises up out of the top. It doesn't sit there in the pot. So the steam collects all up here in the steam dome. So that way it's mostly water free, and your throttle is up in here. And you can see that's my throttle lever going through that sealed rod and into the dome. And as you pull it out, that opens up the throttle on the top side, and depending on the throttle, also on the bottom. I'm making motions with my hands like you guys can see. You really got to get a camera so that way I can draw and point. So the throttle opens up and steam enters what's called the dry pipe. It's called the dry pipe not because it is away from the water source. Water's only right down there, but it's still away from it. So the hope is that it stays dry and no water gets in. And water's not compressible, so if it gets down into your cylinders, that's a bad time for everyone. So that's why it's called the dry pipe. And again, your throttle, kind of like your gas pedal, you're saying how much fuel you want to let in to your cylinders and your pistons, your valves, all that good stuff.
And so there is once you're opening that up, you're opening a valve through the to allow steam through the dry pipe, and then that is connected to your cylinders.
In this era of railroading, yes. It can get a lot more complicated with that, with the invention of superheat, which superheating is, again, one of the coolest things I can think of out there in terms of steam technology. Steam is a specific temperature. It can only be a specific temperature, and I need to pull out my steam tables in order to tell you what that temperature is. I don't have it memorized. And I can't think of, unless Hostler, do you have that memorized?
Yeah, no, not off the top of my head. I had to pull one of my booklets.
Yeah, that's, everyone I know needs to pull up in their booklet to remember what the temperature of steam is. But,
well, isn't it anything above 100 degrees Celsius, essentially?
Under pressure is the problem. So
right.
Water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit at atmosphere. And that's where you get into, like, what the hell is a BTU, the British thermal unit, and how many BTUs do you need to raise pressure to boil water once you have 1 pound of pressure. Which again, that's like another thing I don't have memorized. I need to pull up my steam tables for. And probably more belongs in like a steam locomotive 500 stream, where we really dive into like the theory behind steam. But superheating is you collect all that steam you've just let into your dry pipe in the front in the smoke box. Up here in what's called the superheater header. And inside your boiler, there's small 2-inch tubes, which are called tubes, and large 5.5-inch tubes, which are called superheater flues. And inside your superheater flues run smaller superheater tubes. And those come out of the header, go down, loop through the tube, turn around, come back through the tube, loop, go back through a second time, loop, and come back. And then collect at these 2 giant pipes. And each pipe goes down one side of your smoke box to your cylinders. And what you're doing with superheater steam is because it's no longer in an enclosed space, you can raise the temperature of it because you don't need to worry about the pressure aspect. So you're just raising the temperature of the steam, and it essentially overheats it. No longer has water in it, it's just pure steam, so it's superheated. And a cool thing you can tell on a superheated engine when you're running it is if you open up the cylinder cocks, see how we see steam right now. On a superheated engine, you wouldn't see steam, you'd just hear it hissing and going. Whereas on a saturated engine like this, you'd see the condensate. And I think that's a pretty fun fact, and it's helpful to know as an engineer, if you're even working the engine hard enough for the superheaters to do anything, because you'd open up the cylinder cocks, and you're getting steam coming out, and you're like, yeah, no, not even working the engine hard enough for the superheaters to be effective right now. So it's not a instantaneous thing. You need to be working the engine hard enough in order to have the fire hot enough in order to be creating superheated steam.
Which I suppose makes sense because there's no need for it if the engine isn't working hard enough.
Exactly. And that trick really only works in the summer. I mean, I've fired before, and I've, you know, I thought I had a pretty good fire. I thought I had a hot fire. We were moving at a reasonable clip. And I asked the engineer to pop open the cylinder cock for a second because I wanted to see something, and the only thing that came out was, I mean, it looked exactly like this. It's like, wow, we're like, the fire's not nearly as hot as I thought it was.
Now, operational question: Are we picking up a mogul as a helper or
Yes,
a?
we are going to need a mogul as a helper.
All right, I'm running ahead to get one
Alright,
fired up.
I believe there's one spotted on the firewood depot track.
Okay.
And something else, I'm wondering if they'll add the blowdown valve.
Oh yes, that's a good one. We were talking about boiler washes right in the beginning. Can I run alongside this? Right. So right down there on the lowest, not really. You're moving fast. So right on the bottom of the firebox. Uh-oh. Nope, we're good. No reason to be alarmed, everyone. On the bottom of the firebox, there'd be a large valve that literally opens up to a 1.5, 2-inch pipe, something like that. And that valve is used to get sediment out. And at least, depending on your water treatment program, and water treatment, again, larger thing, you want to treat the water so that way you're reducing the amount of scale buildup. But once a day, you open up that valve for 60 seconds, and you let out boiling water and steam to atmosphere to literally blow out that sediment and that scale. And it is a daily maintenance thing you can do as a steam locomotive operator to increase the longevity of your boilers. Yes, I think that'll have to put that in the idea board on the Discord to see if they'll add it.
I mean, shoot, they've had a cylinder cock since day one, so they might have blowdown valves later on.
And our safety's been up the entire time. And that's another thing we can talk about. Safety valve.
Extra 30 is approaching Hill Valley Yard. Did you want us on departure 2?
Yes. Those cars go on departure 2. That engine can get put away on one of the ready tracks.
Okay. Understood, thank you.
Squeaky, you want to move to another voice channel so we can do our switching moves without disturbing them?
Sure.
Okay.
Switching over.
Yes, the safety valve, or as I like to call it, the anti-boomy boom boom valve.
Yes, the no-go boom valve. So up here, those two small brass objects, those are your safety valves. When your engine reaches maximum allowable working pressure, or WAP, as it is, as the acronym is, and it is a fun acronym.
That's
once-
real?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Maximum MWAP, WAP. I love it. When you reach your maximum allowable working pressure, your safety valve will lift, and it will release steam loudly, instantaneously, until it is dropped about 10 pounds. Now in game, it's just up all the time, and as you can see, this engine's WAP is 155. Alright, we're coming into a yard. Long and short to let people know we're coming in, and I'm gonna ease my throttle all the way back off to what's called a drifting throttle. And we'll talk about that once we get stopped and drifting throttles and all that good stuff, because we really got to be looking out the side of the engine to talk about that.
Let's talk about WAP Makes me think of a recent pop song.
As I recall, it was very popular on TikTok about this time 2 years ago.
That sounds about right to me. That could be a fun song parody.
I'll call up
Oh,
Weird Al.
hey, Eddie Jedi, welcome. Jedi Annalie, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us this evening. Now, where do you want? Are we cutting the helper behind the cabooses, or are we gonna?
We'll do a head end helper.
Okay. I think I have enough pressure to pull out.
All right, I'm stopping just shy of the railway access road here. Again, by our wonderful architect, Mr. Rudy Lowry.
Yes.
Or Rudy
Now I'm
Dreyfus.
hoping that he's more of an NYC fan, so we can call him Rudy Lowry, just for the sake of having a little bit of fun.
Alright, and we've stopped our train, so one nice long whistle, let everyone around know that we're stopped. So, drifting throttle. That little acorn thing right there is called a snifter. And what it does, we'll talk about that later. I did not realize they had a Bissell post in the game. That's cool. I love these models. More luck at them, the cooler things I find. Anyway, that little acorn thing there, called a snifter. What snifters do is they lift up when they sense steam pressure, and they drop down when they don't. And what it does is it lets steam out, so that way it can't build up inside your piston and start moving the train. They also prevent a vacuum from forming when you're drifting. So when you shut off the throttle, this is still moving back and forth. It can suck air and steam back in through your smoke box. And what that does is then that sucks in all of the cinders and grit and grime back in with it. And that's bad, because then you get scoring and everything's ruined and you need to take it apart and fix it. So what a snifter does is it prevents that vacuum from forming and prevents the piston from sucking everything back in through the smoke box. Long or the short. Not modeled in game, but it's how snifters work. So when you work a drifting throttle, you close your throttle enough so that way the snifter's just starting to have some steam come out of it. And that's how you know you have a drifting throttle. You think we have enough time to talk about valves now, or we'll talk about them when we get to the iron ore mine?
We'll talk about them when we get to the iron ore mine.
Yeah. Oh, there you are. So this is your reverser arm. And as this comes out, it pushes that lever forward, which actuates on your valve gear inside. And you know, normal steam engine that you see, it has a whole bunch of extra. It has like 7 more rods out here that don't exist right now. And that's because this has inside valve gear, so it's all inside the frame. I should be paying attention to my brakeman job. You got a truck length to go.
Alright.
And 3 feet. 2 foot. 1 more foot. And pins in.
Lunch. I keep wanting to say 3-step is applied, but that sort of predates this era by several decades.
Yes. In this period, they would use a thing called getting a permission to go between, or one of the railroads I worked for, we called it making air, and it was just same thing as 3-step, and 3-step means you're I love being able to hop into the cab. Your reverser is centered, and it's 3 steps of protection. Your brakes are on, your throttle's closed, and on steam engines you'd have a lock on the throttle so that way it couldn't get pulled out, and your cylinder cocks are open. And that would mean, hey, the engine can't move, and it's safe to go inside. This era, you'd be like, hey, permission in, and you'd step in with engines with train brakes. There'd be an air hose hanging there and an air hose hanging there. You'd hook up your air hoses and you'd put in your pin for the coupler. In this era, in the modern era, when there's no pins and it has a thing called a knuckle coupler, you don't need to worry about that. You're just getting permission to go in and make up the air. And it's called, some railroads call it making air, other railroads call it permission in, but it all means the same thing. It's more nonchalant. It means, hey, dumbass in the cab, don't move the train, I'm in between them. I'm in between cars. That's the gist of it. 3-step is a thing, though.
It is. And honestly, being in between pieces of equipment is probably one of the most dangerous places you can be when working around this stuff in general.
Yeah, I've been working on stuff where we knew things were gonna shift based on what we were doing, but it's still scary when it does.
Yep.
Like we were underneath adjusting, we were underneath the car on flat ground, just adjusting brake rigging and taking up slack, so that way everything pressed against the wheels the way they should. And you know, we were in the clear, but we were still sitting next to the car when everything released, and hearing it all release out and everything shift a bit is still terrifying. And was not underneath or in the car when this was happening either. Still terrifying.
And it's not just a case of speed either. It's just the fact that you know that there's so much weight and there's so much momentum behind it. That a train, a locomotive car does not need to do a high rate of speed to do a lot of damage to you or to property.
Now, was doing a brake test, and on the railroads we do this thing called an initial terminal brake test. It's where you check to make sure all your brakes apply, all your brakes release, and your handbrakes are knocked off before leaving your initial terminal. And we talked about last time the slack. How much slack there is between coupler and coupler, and how the whole train has slack, so it really adds up by the time you get to the last car. I was doing an initial terminal brake test. We had some people working on the cars. We got them in the clear. Engineer released the train brake, and we were doing this on a hill. The train moved an entire half a car, and these were 85-foot cars. So, what is that? 40 feet? Train moved 40 feet just by releasing the brakes. If someone was laying underneath that train at the time or had a ladder leaned up against the train still, they would have been on the ground. We may have accidentally killed them. I don't know. But it's still, that's kind of the fear of that kind of stuff, and why you want to be very clear with your engine crews when someone's going in between, when someone's in the clear, so that way you can keep account of all these people and you don't kill anyone.
So I am set here in the helper. I've got us lined for the runner.
Alright, you got us lined to go up the iron ore mine?
Mm-hmm.
Alright. And I got my throttle open to like 50%.
I will do the same. So yes, those of you joining us now, thank you for coming aboard on the Soken Mohonk and Western Railroad here in Railroads Online on the Virtual Railroader Academy, where we're talking about everything to do with steam and steam technology and how you use this to make power to make trains move in the real world as well as in the digital world here.
That we are. And hopefully we're not going too far over your head. Again, ask questions. Um, you know, we like questions. I love teaching. One of my favorite things to do when I'm working at my railroad is have students, cause I already know how to do this, so it's more enjoyable when I get to teach other people how to do this. So throw some questions our way on what we're doing here. And there is no silly questions here in this world.
Especially in the world of real railroading where safety is of the utmost importance, it's much better to have something explained to you or to ask something a million times to make sure you really get it than to be afraid to ask and not get it and have something bad happen because you didn't get it.
And I'm hanging out behind to get our switch behind us as we clear up.
Alrighty.
Next train through is going to be coal mine bound, so
Oh yeah, then we'll get them lined for that.
get a chance to see our wonderfully long train. This is
a big one.
sizable. You know, I didn't run the math on this. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to make it.
I'm a little concerned because of how slow it took to get through the flats getting here.
I think we'll be okay.
Well, if we need to run and grab a Eureka to
Push on the rear,
to
we
do a
can.
heavy shove, then, you know,
Yeah.
we do what we must.
We could always just.
But
We could also
we-
double the hill.
But we call the AM and W here. Railroads often have nicknames like the honeybee line or the buckwheat line. We call this the optimism line because we truly believe that a positive attitude will help to get the job done. So that is our motto,
Well, that's
the optimism line.
I've nicknamed it the always missing and wrecked.
Well, on
Which
our
also
off
works.
days, we all have our off days.
I mean, if anyone stuck around for a credit sequence, they'll see all of our misadventures along the way.
That's true.
All right, I got the 2 switches back behind us.
Oh, geez, this junction got very elaborate too, eh?
Oh yeah, that's right. First time you're seeing this.
I knew there was a reason I was looking forward to today's run to the iron ore mine, and now I have that for the. So what is this, like a specific junction name then with this again
this is,
very elaborate platform?
This is Plateau Station.
Oh.
I don't know if you're on to 100 yet, but I'm at 100.
I'm not, but once I hop back on after getting my necessary screenshot,
Are you running up in rail panic?
I am.
Here, I'll get your throttle.
Oh, yeah, by all means. I love the proliferation of sand towers.
Yeah, that has something to do with, like, it's a power station. I don't know. Rudy said something needed to go back there.
I mean, I guess just to have an easy way to make it triangular, I can understand that. All it does is make me want coaches that much more.
This is pretty cool.
And we still have to let these poor developers finish the update for desync and spline issues.
I know.
That video they put out the other day was pretty cool, though.
I'm very excited. It's gonna be a lot further away than we're expecting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, based on the language he was using, I'm guessing a few months. But at least what we have to work with now is still pretty cool, and the viewers, the passengers we have along with us today are watching your stream where everything is super smooth and silky as opposed to my screen where the train behaves like it had a little bit too much caffeine in its Starbucks this morning.
Well, you know, they're watching 12 FPS played back at 60 FPS, so I don't know how smooth that really is.
I would take 12 FPS over. Oh my gosh, did my steam locomotive just do a barrel roll? Did it actually derail, or did it really, or is it just the hallucinogenic type of derailment?
You love a nice hallucinogenic derailment figure on the always missing and wrecked.
Yes. Explains why things are always missing and wrecked. Oh, jeez. But yes, now this is a scenic part of the trip that we've got in store for you guys today. We're going along the mountain pass, as it were.
Yes, we have manipulated this, coming up on the China wall.
Mm-hmm.
And if you type in chat, exclamation point map, it'll get sent to a link of the map here that you have to go through, along with all of the notable points along the way. At least I think you will. I just set that up. I don't know if it works yet. So someone try it. Let me know if it doesn't work. Because I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, Jedi, if you're still here, you can try that. Or El Star, if you haven't already disappeared to play Destiny 2. I heard double grouping and bleeping, which has me thinking we are joined. Oh, we're joined by our crew members. I thought we might be joined by Mr. Lowy and his wife.
No, it's just us.
No, I believe
Okay.
Mr. Lowy that worked on the railroad museum today.
Oh, well.
Which is a little bit why I'm joking on him a little bit in derailments, because he's not here.
Mm-hmm. And since it seems like he will be unavailable to join us tonight, then we're guaranteed another hour and 25 minutes of dunking time,
Yes.
which we think is suitable.
I am a little concerned because we're only on the 3% right now.
Yeah, just to let you guys.
What, 3.5?
We're coming up to a 4.
Ooh. You know, I'm willing to run back to home base if we think that's going to be beneficial.
You want to run back to Plateau and maybe grab another mobile?
I am
You're
doing that.
already past me.
Yep. I am reading the tea leaves, which is ironic because I don't have my tea with me. I usually have my tea. I had no
We could run over Plateau if you want.
No, I'm closer.
No, we're good. How'd you guys make out with your moves?
We're all done.
Alright,
Yeah, you guys are coming a little soft on, a little quiet on the live stream.
Oh, we're quiet on the live stream?
I mean, yeah, you're coming in pretty quiet. Nick's coming in kind of muffled, I guess you could say.
Oh dear.
Oh, alright, let's see what I can do about that. Alright, that. And
I pride myself on my perfect diction, and so coming in muffled has me deeply concerned.
Does that sound better for everyone out there? Turn myself up a little bit as well.
Peter Piper picked
Yep,
a peck of pickled peppers.
Peter Piper picked a pickled peppers.
Yeah, it sounds better on stream.
Okay, that's good.
Aim to please.
Hustler and Squiggy, what are you guys feeling up to doing? We've got a train for the refinery to go out. There's a coal mine train. What are you feeling up to?
Maybe. Oh. Sorry, yeah. What was that?
Yeah, go ahead, Squiggy.
I was about to suggest maybe refinery.
I'm cool with whatever.
Okay.
Refinery trip for a couple of refined guys sounds like a good match to me.
I don't know about refined. Salty works for me.
Well, we don't have any salt mines on this route, so refined you are.
Not yet, at least. So a train like this, in this kind of a scenario, we'd be at what's called tonnage, and as the fireman, you'd be shoveling nonstop. You just 100% shoveling all the time. Normally on modern engines, the door is powered by air, so it opens and closes on its own, and you just step on a pedal in the floor. But in a case like this, you'd be putting so much coal in that the door would basically be open the entire time. The engine would be in the corner, using as much steam as it can. Throttle would be out, what's called on the nut, which is a literal nut at the end to prevent the throttle from coming out of the toothed gear that's in here to hold the throttle in place. And Nick, we've stalled.
Well, I am waiting for the fire to build and our helper, and I will be on my way very soon.
So this is what's known as an overtonnage train for you folks watching at home.
Which we totally planned. This was a rehearsed bit.
Yet we wanted to show how to deal in these kinds of circumstances.
We pride ourselves on our rehearsals.
We were practicing on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yep. We did a good job of stalling this train out. I feel very accomplished by our feat.
Yeah, it was a good rehearsal on Wednesday.
Yep.
So does anyone in chat have any questions while we're sitting here waiting on our helper? And I guess, if we can go over some more railroading stuff as waiting for some questions to roll in. When you stop on a train, you stop on a hill like this and you're waiting on help or unscheduled stop, you'd whistle 5 short blasts, and that means send out your brakeman on the rear to go protect the hind end of your train. There's no radios in this time period. Everything's done based off a watch, and every other train on the railroad is looking at their watch to go, all right, that train passed that location at that time, that means I can pass that location at this time. And when you have an unexpected stop like this, you literally send some person down with a red flag to go and warn approaching trains that you're stopped so they don't run into you. If you like folk songs, you've heard the story of Casey Jones, and that's the reason why we do this.
Because we don't want to write more folk songs.
Exactly.
Or no, wait, that's not quite the reason.
Folk songs are terrible.
We don't want any tragic folk songs.
There we go.
Is there a folk song that isn't tragic?
Um,
And
I mean,
viewers,
none
I
that come to
challenge
mind
you.
right yet.
I challenge you, viewers, in the comments. Name me a folk song that isn't tragic. And I don't know. We don't have subscribers yet, but we'll give you some kind of a reward. But
I feel like the answer lies with Gordon Lightfoot. I just have to think through his discography.
well, it's definitely not the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I'll tell you that much.
No. Or if you could read my mind. Carefree Highway, there we go. So this is Carefree Railway. Carefree Railway, let me slip away on you. Or let me chug away on you. And if that was also a poor transition to the rehearsed bit of me getting to do my Gordon Lightfoot impersonation, then you're right.
So where's the refinery train?
That would be train. That would be the train on track on departure 2 that you just put together, and you can grab engine 93 and run that train
Okay, to the refinery.
to the refinery. Did you guys run over to the refinery?
No, we're at Hill Valley, but
Okay.
we just need to put the caboose on the other end.
Okay, you made up the train in that direction. Got it. No one's watching. You can get the hand of God out there.
Okay.
Use the digital five-fingered crane, as it were.
Yes.
Yoink.
So while we're waiting here, any questions amongst our viewers?
Not seeing any at the moment,
Okay.
but
Well,
we are not going to be stuck for long. We are sending. Odin is coming to the rescue.
there we go. Odin to the rescue. That somehow seems fitting.
Very.
And if you haven't caught on, all the moguls on this railroad are named after Norse gods
The
or
original ones,
goddesses.
not the Marvel ones. I mean, the Marvel ones are in here, obviously, but not because they're Marvel.
Correct. That is correct. So yeah, breaking away from steam engines for a minute as the roles on the train, or you have your engineer, your fireman, engineer drives or runs the train, as we say here in the States. Fireman shovels coal. If it's a coal burner. Fireman maintains the fire and the water and the steam pressure. Make sure there's enough water so the train don't go boom. Make sure there's enough fire to make steam, and make sure the steam pressure is where it needs to be for any given piece of time on the railroad. And pressure can vary. You want to stay as close to your MWAP as possible, your maximum allowable working pressure. But you can let it drop 10-15 pounds depending on what you need it to do. Storming up a big hill like this, you want that pressure right up there just before the safety valve's going to lift. When we were moving along before in the flats over by Meh, on the other side of the valley here, you could be 15 pounds below the safety. You're not going to hurt the engine. You don't need all that steam pressure.
Okay. Hostler, let's switch over to Road Crew 1 again so we could get this train set up.
Copy that.
Then you have your conductor. He's in charge of the train, or she. They're in charge of the train. They're the ones who tell the engineer stop, go, and all of that good stuff. You have your head end brakeman, which is the brakeman who rides on the engine. And brakemen are kind of like junior conductors. They do switching moves, stuff like that.
They're
If the
the
train
one that rides in the doghouse.
engines with dog houses, yeah. Other times some places would use brakeman, head end brakeman as student firemen, because you could learn how to fire while you're riding up in the cab doing nothing. And then rear end brakemen, who were the conductor's assistant. Alright, you got 6 cars. 4, 2, 1 more car. Half a car. Truck length. Pins going. Oh.
Pins going, oh?
Pins in.
Oh, cool.
Alright, I think I can manage the front 2 engines, because the running boards have a hitbox. If you want to stay with the helper.
You got it.
And you could see the iron ore mine. The distance right over there, right where my cursor is. We're so close yet so far away. Oh god, don't fall down the mountain.
Yeah,
Alright.
that is an unforgiving trip.
That engine's on. All right, both my engines are at 100%.
As is mine. Now we'll see some good progress. So once we get to the top, shall I run this guy down and then run up for the other one, or what's going to be the best way to send them down?
We'll break the rules and we'll take we'll take Thor and Odin down together. And I'll follow you with the road train.
Okay.
My suggestion is just whatever engines, if you're running from the lead engine down, just set the tender handbrake to like 20%, so that way it doesn't bounce and vibrate off.
So
on the on the uphill. So if you're controlling from the downhill engine, set the handbrake on the engine on the uphill side to like 20%, and it'll prevent the tender from like wobbling off with like any weird physics stuff. So if you're running from
rear tender as opposed to the front tender.
If you're running from Odin, set the tender on Thor to like 20%.
Okay, gotcha. Alright, so front tender. Got it. This is mountain railroading at its peak, folks. We got not one, not two, but 3 workhorses tackling this train today.
And I think I'm gonna stop explaining everything for a minute and just take in the awesome sounds of 3 engines storming up the grade, and you can hear the front 2 up here pretty well. These are the moments that railroaders live for who work on steam engines, are getting to slog a train up the grade, getting every single available ounce of power out of your engine. It's the coolest thing in the world. I've fired engines that, not near tonnage, but you feel the sizableness of the train, and it's just the coolest thing in the world to be right there on like this razor thin edge of my fire's perfect, my water's perfect. You know, the train is heavy enough where even on the flats the engine's working power the whole time. It's a really cool experience to get to take in, and it's kind of a not untouchable, but it's just this supreme experience that I'm sure the game's going to get very close to getting there. I mean, we've had that already just from the running standpoint in game, slogging uphill with tonnage trains, and it'll be cooler once we can fire in game realistically. You know, some of the things they're working on now in game that they just released are a better sound set. So like in a situation like this with all 3 engines, we'd hear the echo of all 3 engines bouncing back off the other side of the canyon here and bouncing off the rock wall against us. And that'll bring some really supreme moments to the game.
Both whistles.
Yes, and you'll hear all of the whistles. Yeah, Sasquatch, it takes a ton of shoveling. You know, we were talking earlier, situations like this, where we're at tonnage, the firemen would be shoveling like crazy. The door would almost never be closed. It's a fun time. Railroad I work on has a pretty decent hill heading back to the station, and you know, we're running only 7-car trains, but with our saturated engine, it's not struggling at all. But I'm still shoveling the whole time up that hill, and it takes about 3 minutes to get up that hill, but that's a very long 3 minutes when you're just constantly getting fuel there onto your fire. And we were talking about injectors before and water usage and the cycle of water. The closer you are to tonnage, the more steam you're using. And as you're using that steam, you need to replace it with water, so you keep your injector on. And there's this thing called it's called firing against the gun. You have your injector on, or both injectors on, because there's two, and you're putting in the maximum amount of water into your boiler as you can. But you need to have your fire hot enough so that way the injector is not cooling down your pressure. So you're making enough steam to your fire is hot enough to evaporate the water that you're putting in almost as instantaneously as it gets in. And that's a cool moment, and that's one of the things I do on my railroad coming up the hill, especially on the saturated engine, is we'll go from that's the wrong button. We were talking about the water glass earlier. Top of the glass is what's called a full glass. Going up the hill, you'll go from a full glass of water down to about half a glass of water. So you're using about 800 gallons of water in about half a mile, getting up the hill with this train. And if I fire against the gun, I'll lose a quarter of a glass. Maybe, depending on the engineer. Sometimes I can keep it, sometimes not lose any water at all, depending on how my fire is. But that's that razor thin line. That's that razor thin edge that firemen love to live on with tonnage trains and near tonnage stuff. That's where the cool factor is. And even in my real world, where we're not tonnage, but I can still get on that razor thin edge, it's the coolest thing in the world. Yeah, it's a great sound coming up the hill in real life, and in here, even in game, it's a great sound. I don't think it translates well, but my headphones are surround sound, and as I'm scanning around, I'm hearing both engines in different ears, and it's gonna be great when when the sound set's a little bit cleaner and there's a new chuff loop in the game.
Especially to capture the throatiness, because there's such a different timbre of sound from an engine that's moving light power and you're gently pulling out versus working a heavy train and pulling out. Mm-hmm. It has such a throatiness to it if it's really under load.
Oh yeah, and we call that the shotgun exhaust, and the best example I can think of in real life modern day is a 425. Reading and Northern specific, that exhaust sounds like a shotgun going off every time. If you hear that thing starting up slow and that first exhaust beat, it sounds like a 12 gauge going. It sounds like 30 12 gauges going off, to be perfectly honest. It's a fun sound. Sasquatch, Durango and Silverton's amazing. I interviewed for a job out there like 12 years ago. 12 years ago now? 10 years ago? Something like that. Nick, you could probably shut off.
Okay, will do. Frisco 1522 is another one that I hear talked about frequently with regards to having shotgun stack off.
Mm-hmm.
But 425 is the one that you can experience this day and age at the Reading and Northern.
Yep.
Eastern Pennsylvania, and boy, that is a nice engine. That is a really nice engine.
I've actually yet to see it in person.
Yeah, I got to see it, it's been a while. Last time I saw it in person was a little over 10 years ago. Steve Lara of K&L Trains released a virtual model of it for Train Z Railroad Simulator, and he captured the sound of it really nicely. That is a fun model to drive.
Is Steve Lara related to Pete?
Brothers.
God, everyone in the family is involved in railroad somehow.
I think there's a sister who isn't, but yes. The father does
Senior,
the artistic watercolors.
I have
I,
a wonderful picture of a blue comet in Tuckahoe on my wall next to me.
I
By
like
Senior.
that. We have like 8 of his. My wife has one of his in her office. The Penn Station Gateway to Gotham
Oh,
image of
yeah,
his.
that's a nice one.
Yeah. So yes, he's his work's well beloved, and then yes, the Laro dynasty with all its various forms of rail fandom.
Yeah. You want to run up and unload as we're coming through?
Sure.
Or do you want me to unload and you can run?
No, I got it.
Okay.
I'm running up now.
Uh, but yeah, Sasquatch. I loved Durango and Silverton when I was there. It's I think one of the coolest railroads in the world. Um, just in terms of beauty and god damn it if their engines don't sound amazing echoing off the walls of the canyon or flying through the valley. That was an awesome experience. I can't wait to go again someday.
And I think they've converted one of their engines to oil,
No,
but
they're
not
at
all of
they're
them.
at like 3 are remaining coal burners. Only 2 are in active service.
Okay.
Yeah. Tier.
Indeed.
It's
But hey, at least it's,
it's
yes,
operating.
I know. Yeah, I know that I get the appeal of coal. I totally do. I get the smell. But, at least oil's better than nothing.
This is true. Um, coal's more fun to fire than oil. That's my qualm with it. But I understand the reasoning behind their conversion.
Well, because, yeah, oil, you basically just, what's it called? The atomizer? You just set the atomizer to a particular level and then you just adjust it as need be. But
Pretty
you
much.
usually barely have to adjust it at all.
Once you have the atomizer set, you're just changing feed levels. But I hate calling stuff set it and forget it. But oil
It
for the
kind
most
of
part is
is.
set it and forget it. And it's easier to adjust. You don't need to plan ahead. If you need more steam, you can throw the feed valve wide open and get more fire instantaneously, which then puts more stress. And that comes back to the stress factor we were talking about earlier, about heating up too quickly. All
Do
right.
you need the money for this?
Nope.
Unload.
Get yourself money.
Alrighty.
For the V2 when the spline update comes out, I have found a way where I can carry over money and XP for everyone.
Ooh,
So I'm gonna let that carry over.
yay. I'm glad that my funds can. My allowance will still be good. My pinky
Yes.
bank will still have some change in it.
Uh,
Yeah, looking forward to getting that. I've never experienced even my non-rail fanning folks, like when I tell them I'm into trains, they ask if I've gone to see Durango and Silverton or Cumbres and Toltec, and I have to shake my head and say no. And I've been out to Colorado, and ridden, I've rode on several trains, different tour signs and the like, but not the narrow gauges. So hopefully that will get rectified soon.
I've yet to do Croombrace. If I'm going to Croombrace and Toltec, I wanna fire there. Like I wanna know if I can do it, cause it's especially from the Chama side, it's 4%, which is
Mm-hmm.
they're running those trains at tonnage up the Chama side. And I want to know if I'm able to do it.
Mm.
Um, so I'd want to I'd want to fire, not ride, at least halfway.
You probably know somebody. You probably know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy.
I think I know a guy who knows a guy. I knew someone, but they no longer work there.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah. there a handbrake on this? Like we're
I will
slowing down
say-
a lot.
No, I didn't set any handbrakes. As nice as the narrow gauges are, and I look forward to, I will say the one that nobody seems to talk about out there, but I highly recommend it, is the Royal Gorge route. Canyon, out of Canyon City, Colorado. That is a nice trip.
That's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
We made that joke last week too.
Well, but we have new folks, so hopefully new folks with optimism of wonderful puns. We can hope anyway.
Yes, the hanging bridge out there at the Royal Gorge is one of the I love it as an engineering marvel. It's such a cool solution to a problem that probably shouldn't have existed because it's a dumb idea to build through there. But I love it.
Tennessee Pass in general is one of those. They thought it was a good idea, and they went with it. Kind of scenarios.
Yeah.
The other thing that's nice about it, so it's great scenery. It's also a really classy train. I'm a sucker for streamliners in general, and that's a place that has matching paint equipment, which is so nice.
I'm a sucker for when the equipment matches. I could kind of care less about heritage. I think what makes a tourist railroad is matching equipment.
Yeah. And sometimes you see it in places, but I think people only complain when it's really noticeable. Like, you don't see folks complaining that Strasbourg doesn't have their wooden passenger cars painted. Boston and Maine and Western Maryland and, the kind of half dozen railroads. Most of them were Boston and Maine, admittedly, but still. Simply to say that folks get kind of bent around the axle about the... I might need to ask you to back up because I missed this one flat car.
Okay, bring it to a stop. Hey
I'm
guys.
still not sure if it's... I do enter and I do clicking because I'm not sure which does it.
It's whatever you set your keybind to.
I haven't set it ever.
Oh.
So I just click and eventually something appears.
If you go to like options and controls, you can set a keybind for it. I did mine to middle mouse button.
Good to pull ahead.
Okay, so train 701 is assembled and ready to depart at your discretion.
Alright, 701 Railroad, yours south of Hill Valley.
Alright.
Just watch out for the switches at Rattling Valley. She'll probably have to stop and watch out for the idiot curves in there.
Yep.
They're really 88.
They're not great curves. Never fixed
yeah.
those.
Speaking of curves, how did the refinery come out?
Oh, everything went well delivering there. We never finished fixing the track though.
Oh,
So,
that's what I was gonna ask, because if the track got...
No, that's the track. Rudy took the train back down, and I was like, hey, just, be careful. Curves are not great. And he goes, okay. And I'm like, no, like, we put a train on the
Really?
ground, like, no, really not great. And he went through, he goes, that's not great in there. Like, yeah, I tried to warn you.
Did he make it? I thought this was
He
gonna lead... Okay.
He made it.
I thought...
But he said it was a full pucker moment.
Yep.
Probably pulled an unstoppable. Do you have a preference of how you load these hoppers?
We can load from... Where's
From Quebec?
Yeah, from caboose end to... What is the head end? Get the...
Okay, then pull ahead 2 cars.
Alright, coming ahead too. You want a spot for that first car, and then we'll get the train put back together and set up for the return trip, and then load that way.
Sure. Might as well, I suppose.
Hostler, do we have markers back there?
Yep, we have marker lights on the bopper.
Okay, we're officially a train.
Now, do you want to just... I mean, couldn't we just take the two engines off the head end and just send them down, since we already have an engine on the tail end?
We gotta get cabooses to the other end, cause they'll get thrown off with the weight.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
And 32 or Thor and Odin gotta go back to Plateau
Gotcha.
for allocation.
One car.
One more car.
Gotta keep the motor power desk happy.
Yep. I think I'm gonna relegate one of my favorite engines to helper service.
And which one is that?
Freya.
Uh,
Named after the Greek goddess who also shares a name with my cat. Or my kitten. So, you know, got that sentimental value there.
right there is good.
You want to tie on a handbrake there or something?
Yeah, I'll put the caboose handbrake on.
Okay.
Okay, got a handbrake on.
Copy that.
You know, I always felt like the ore pellets that come out of these, they make me think of Reese's Puff cereal.
I thought you were gonna say Reese's Pieces. And I don't know why I said Reese's, because I disagree with that as a word. But, no, I see where you're coming from.
They look like you could just add milk and you'd be set for breakfast.
No, I get where you're coming from with that.
And first hopper's loaded.
Alright. I'm cut away and bringing the engines around.
I'm gonna have to go AFK. I will be back in a moment.
Yeah, totally cool. I'll keep everyone entertained. How you doing, people of the world? We're up at the iron ore mine doing some loading, and as soon as we get the train put back together and we're finished up loading, we'll continue our conversation about locomotive valves. What's a D valve, piston valve, slide valve, all that good stuff shortly. So stick with us. We'll be getting back to some of the more technical elements soon. If you do have any questions about steam engines, railroading in general, throw them in the chat. That's what we're here for. I don't know if we've plugged this already or not, but everyone here playing the game tonight works for the railroad in some capacity, whether it's volunteering at a railroad museum, working for short lines, firing steam engines. We're all railroaders in some capacity and happy to answer questions about what it is we do.
Alright, train 701 has departed Hill Valley southbound.
701 Hill Valley South. Now I'm being very precise. Yeah, I wouldn't call it precise with my throttle movements, but I'm being small movements. You know, I got it down to like 8% throttle, and then I kicked it off all the way because I know I'm getting ready to stop. And I hit my independent, let the brakes snap on, get a switch, and it's still rolling. Alright, throw my reverser forward, then kick my brakes off, and give it throttle. There we go, you start rolling. And what's it? It feels like pushing against the brake. All brakes are off. I'm gonna do a thing called kicking, where you pull the cut lever, pull the pin, and you rip your throttle open. And then you slam your throttle closed and throw on the brake hard and let whatever car or whatever you're trying to move just keep rolling ahead and it'll roll into place. And just getting our train made up now to continue loading and then return back to our main yard, Hill Valley. If you do want to see the map of the railroad and places that we're talking about, go ahead and hit !map, all lowercase in chat, and it should bring you to the map. It's a new command I just programmed, so I think it works. Let me know if it doesn't though. Yeah. Got that done. And I'm stuck inside a Firebox. I'm unstuck inside a Firebox.
And we're just.
I'm getting motive power moved around and reset.
Well, do you want to? Oh, I see. You're pulling it, and then we pull Odin off.
Yeah, we could pull Odin and the cabooses off and send the cabooses down the third track.
Doke.
And we could put Odin and Thor over on the same track.
I've got a handbrake set on the hopper.
Copy that. Alright, I got that switch there. You wanna run? I'll be brakeman.
Sure, hopping into Odin here.
Yeah, grab Odin, we'll take these two cabooses with us. Caboose? Caboosei?
I've always been a fan of caboose.
Right? Because it's like geese. Oh,
yeah.
Handbrake's on there. That would help.
Oh.
I took the handbrake off the cabooses. One on this tender?
Nope, there's a handbrake on the tender. Nope.
Yeah, so we just talked about kicking cars. We're gonna go ahead and kick our cabooses all the way around.
Okie doke. One of the benefits of recreating the 1880s of railroading is that you're allowed to kick cars.
You're allowed to kick cars now, too.
I thought that was,
You can't fly switches, but you can kick cars.
Oh, okay.
Half a car. And far enough. I got the pin pulled. You can give it a good old shove. Yeah, common misconception. You are allowed to kick cars to this day.
Just not flying switches.
Yeah, plus with a kicking car, you're not changing something in front of the path. of the thing that you're moving. You're just sending it in a direction. Alright. That's probably good, Nick.
All right.
And, you want to get yourself tied onto Odin on the, or Thor on the middle track, and then get, Freya tied onto the hoppers while I'm doing this?
Can do.
So, in our brief respite from talking about steam engines while we're doing, switching moves. Yeah, this is flying a car. Or kicking a car. I've heard some people call it Dutch dropping. Which I've never heard before. That's a new one for me. But, you know, there's 1,000 names out there for similar things. Railroaders were very good at being unstandard about everything. Just ask the standard railroad of the world, which had no standard even amongst itself, the Pennsylvania Railroad.
It was just too big. That's the thing about...
They were standard for researching the hell out of stuff.
Yeah, they were the standard research department of the railroad.
Like, they would spend, what, tens of thousands of dollars on figuring out which light bulbs were the best? And that was back in the 1930s and 40s?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's money well spent. If you've ever been in a steam engine at night, I can tell you one thing. You can't see shit. Those headlights do nothing. You're lucky if you could see 90 feet out. And you can see everything within like 30 feet of you and everything like 150 feet in front of you, but there's this whole dead spot right in the middle where you can't see anything.
Yes, that's a misconception, because I would have thought that you'd have more visibility with the power that the headlights do have.
No, there's not that much power on steam engines. Diesels, great, amazing. Those twin sealed beams, wow, you can see the world. But steam engines, the way that the headlights mounted in with the parabolic reflector, it creates a shadow right where the headlight actually is. So there you have this just black spot dead in the center of your beam.
Huh.
Yeah. Fun facts.
By the way, train 701 has passed Mile Long Yard.
Copy that. 701s through Mile Long Yard southbound. And off in the distance, we heard Nick whistle 3 shorts. That means he's backing up. And you do that, you know, it's the whistles are a thing you use to let everyone else know what's going on around. Let everyone else around know what's going on. So that way they don't get run over by a train. Plus, the goal here on railroads is to not get run over by a train.
And we are having fun at the iron ore mine here on the Soken, Mohonk, and Western. And if you're still with us in the chat, you can type in !map and see where the iron ore mine is and what the map of the railroad looks like in general. Get a lay of the land. Oops.
There we go. You can also do !miniswerg, MINIZWERG, to get a better version, not a better version of the map, but a zoomable version, and you can actually see what cars are on the railroad and stuff like that. !map gives you a photoshopped map that I've come up with location names. The purple denotes the main line of the railroad. Good stuff like that.
So
hey,
you
look.
know how you were saying that you could talk more about an engine if you were looking at the underside of the engine?
Yeah, so who wants to talk about valve gear?
I do.
Same.
All right, so these engines that are in game have what's called Stevenson valve gear, in that there are two eccentrics, and you have a forward eccentric and a reverse eccentric. And God, even the brass is modeled on the crowns. That's gorgeous. All right, let's see. I'm gonna build a little viewing platform here so we can get in closer. Please don't eat that engine. All right, and get a little bit closer here. All right, so that's our valve gear. Those right there are our eccentrics. You see we have one for each side, and they are on the same axle as our main rod, which is the long rod which goes to our pistons, and that's what's known as your main driver. The rods connecting your other wheels to your main axle are your connecting rods or side rods. So one of these is your forward eccentric, one of these is your reverse eccentric. Forward is top one's forward, bottom one's your reverse eccentric. And as you're changing your reverser, you're changing where. See that brass block right there? That's your link block. You're changing where that is in the eccentrics, and that's this U-shaped thing right here that I'm scrolling over. You're changing where that is all the way up or close to middle. As you get closer to middle, you're using less steam, which is letting less steam into your pistons. We were talking all about that earlier. That's what that does. That's what that looks like. And those connect to, I believe they call it tumbling shaft on the Stevenson valve gear, which comes out, and let's look at that on an engine that's right side up. Yeah, see, so that connects right to there. Alright, so that's what the Stevenson valve gear looks like from inside. And it's a lot of that's the same when you get into the valve shirt stuff, except you only have one eccentric rod that does both forward and reverse. But yeah, that's what the valve gear looks like. That's what it does. They're very nicely modeled engines. At this, there's linkage here for the cylinder cocks.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing that. The connecting. The what's connecting the pilot to the engine.
Yeah, that pin's correct.
Complete with the hardware in place and everything.
Yeah, they did an excellent job. It's really good teaching tool, which is why I wanted to do these streams, was to talk about this stuff in kind of a relaxed fashion where we can walk through things piece by piece and not really get too deep into the woods on everything. Yeah. Alright, well, that's all I've got on the valve gear of Stevenson.
Alright, I think we'll need that switch line to get to the refinery.
I'm glad.
Copy that.
I totally planned on flipping over this engine so that it could be a teaching moment in more ways than one.
This was all part of our rehearsals on Wednesday. We talked about this, we planned this.
This was after the Gordon Lightfoot singing came into play.
Yes. Oh, tender's rolling towards the engine. That's convenient.
And you got a pin in?
Yeah, I got the thing in.
Under? Okay. I'll let you put in the pin in the engine too, because yours is probably more reliable than mine. So do you want me to run the engines down now, or do you want to have help loading the?
I can use help loading. While you're running those down, I'll talk about piston valves and slide valves and all that good stuff.
Okay. Truck. Pins in. Good to pull back one car.
All right, back one car. Did you get the handbrake knocked off?
Ooh, I did not. Thank you for the reminder.
And that happens in the real
Now it
world.
is off.
Yes, in real life, Sasquatch, you can rerail a Class 70 with your bare hands. I've seen people do it. It's impressive.
But that wasn't a Class 70. That was a Cook Mogul, for clarification.
Yes, these are the Cook Moguls. There are Class 70s
Half
on the
car.
railroad. Half
Truck.
truck.
And you're good in there.
Stop. That's a heavy train.
Wait.
Do we troll Heist a little bit and send people to go ask him about the time he rerailed the Class 70 with his bare hands? Or a C-19 with his bare hands?
Sure. Gotta give him some fun.
Yeah, just hop into the official Discord and ask Heist about the time he picked up a C-19, the 346, with his bare hands and rerailed it.
No, I'm gonna have to do that. Even if you guys don't, I will.
Oh, that's good stuff. I love it. Yeah, so let's see. What else can we talk about on the steam engine while we're here?
One car.
Up, and we're moving one car.
You could talk about the grates.
Yeah, I'll
That
talk
is a
more about
good-
the fire. Yeah, it's an easy one to talk about.
That's a great subject.
So, you know, we were talking about the fire before, the firebox, crown sheet,
Half.
half,
Truck.
truck.
And then there's good.
So, inside the firebox, and it's actually modeled here, we have grates. And just like a grate on your barbecue, that's where your fire lives. Well, I guess not like a grate on your barbecue, because your fire is under the grates on your barbecue, and you're cooking delicious meats on your grates. Here, our fire is on top of the grates, and underneath it is the ash pan, where all of our non-burnable material drops down into. You have different types of grates. You have table grates, which are long, flat grates with holes in them. My personal preference for grates. Then you have finger grates, which are small little sections of grate that all slide onto a T-shaped piece of steel, and they rock together some little tiny sections of grate make up one big grate. Those are easier to repair because if you need to replace parts of it, you can just take the whole thing out and then slide off a finger. If you look on the outside of the cook here, you see it's flat and then it slopes down. Sloping grates are helpful because then your coal kind of marches forward as it's vibrating. And that vibrating, the ash, it helps the ash drop down out. Yeah, grates are a wonderful thing. You want to make sure you have airflow, so you want to make sure. And I can't believe this is modeled in the game. Right there, right underneath there, where my cursor is, that slit. That's where the ash pan is. You want to make sure there's no ash built up to there, so that you get airflow underneath. If you block the airflow underneath, you can actually melt the grates. The fire is so hot. It's about 3,000 degrees in there. Ready, Nick?
Yep, good to pull back one.
So, train 701 has stalled.
Oh no. Half.
Oh dear, I just got all the switches line for you too.
Truck.
There's good.
Fair enough.
Sasquatch is saying that it is a pain to take out the ash. It
Uh,
is a pain in the ash to take out the ash.
it. I hate dealing with ash. Um, it's never easy. Uh,
Especially when you don't have an actual ash pit, you gotta dump it on the tracks and then shovel it up later.
yep, we'd have to do that every morning at my railroad. We dump ash right after breaking up the bank, so you're already hot and sweaty and kind of hating life. And wondering why you enjoy doing this, and then you have to dump all the ash out from the day before. And we soak ours down so that way it's completely soaked, so that way it's soaked through with water, so that way it doesn't spray up onto the engine and get the engine dirty. And get ash into bearing surfaces and stuff like that where it shouldn't be. And it is just miserable shoveling wet ash into a bucket, into a bucket loader. It's
And then
not a
you
fun
gotta
time.
get on. You gotta get on your hands and knees with a bent pole, like try to get up into the chute and knock everything loose. And then you got the small little scraper. You gotta go in through the side doors and just scrape everything off that's hanging on the side as well.
Yep, you got the magic wand of water that is never quite sealed all the way, so you're getting water sprayed back at you.
One car.
Yeah, I'm reading your mind.
Yeah, Squiggy, you want to switch over to another radio channel?
Yeah, you guys may just want to double the hill.
That's what I'm thinking is what I was going to suggest. Why don't we just double the hill? We'll separate the tank cars and carry the pipes up later.
Half.
Well, Sasquatch, you sound like somebody who has dealt with ash before. Is this true? Truck. And that's good there.
Fair enough.
I notice you like to keep your iron ore mine fully stocked.
Yeah, it's kind of accidental. Gotta run some more,
Designated ore trains, because
yeah.
yeah, you've got lumber just sitting here because you've hit capacity on the mine itself.
I've got like another 4 ore cars sitting down, or 6 ore cars sitting down at Plateau. So that'll probably get added to the job board of running a big hopper train up. I owned a house that had a wood heat, so yeah, true-ish. Fireplace sensor was quite efficient, so it wasn't bad, but it was still a chore. Yeah. I like having a fire. I don't have one at my current place. Wish I did. I like fireplaces. They're nice on a winter day. During Hurricane Sandy, we went to my grandparents' house because they had a generator, but it wouldn't run the furnace. So to heat the place, they had a coal stove in the basement that we used for heat, and I had that thing going with wood, like almost burning red, almost red hot, glowing. I had that thing. It was great. It was like having radiant heat because it was in the basement, so it heated the whole floor above. It was nice. Alright, so I got this switch here. And let's talk about valves. So, we talked earlier, the reversers like driving a manual. All the way forward is like being in first gear, or all the way to either end is like being in first gear, and as you get closer to center, it's like shifting up into sixth. Again, mirrored in everything you have in forward, you also have in reverse. So when you're all the way forward, you have a valve here that it's called a D valve or a slide valve. And it's shaped kind of like that. and it's held down by steam pressure. Steam comes in through the top, and when the valve is all the way back, it exposes a port in the front, lets steam in, which pushes the cylinder back. That valve then moves all the way to the front, and it opens up an exhaust port, which lets steam out through the inside of that horseshoe because it's hollow, and that steam escapes out up through your blast pipe and out your stack. Hey pilot.
Hey, what's up?
And as you bring that reverser closer towards center, you're exposing those inlet ports for less time. So then the steam is in the cylinders expanding as opposed to using brute pressure to push the piston back and forth. Now, modern versions of valves are called slide valves, and those look like a smaller piston on top. Modern versions of slide valves are called piston. Yeah, I got that right. Thought I confused it. I thought I messed myself up in my head there for a second. And engines in the game will eventually have slide valves. These 1800 versions all have D valves or slide valves. And you could actually buy conversion kits as a real railroad to convert your slide valves to piston valves as they became a thing. Anyone have any questions about how that works? The valve's kind of a magical thing. The best way to describe it is the reverser is like a stick shift on your car, but it's also like, if you're into cars, variable valve engine where it lets in less gas to get a cleaner burn and be more fuel efficient. It's kind of the same thing. Steam engines just did it first. So we're going to be getting out of here and heading back. And, we've been sitting, so we should probably have our cylinder cocks open. Start working out of town.
You are going to be so set for when that's implemented as a thing, whereas I will constantly be getting error messages notifying me that I have blown off a cylinder head.
Error messages, or just like the engine won't move anymore? And like there's an animation.
Whatever they choose to implement to designate that you done screwed up.
Just wait until I move my server over to realistic firing, and like we're gonna have to slog up a grade and like actually keep steam up and run the injectors ourselves.
I remember playing Microsoft Train Simulator in advanced mode and going into a tunnel with Flying Scotsman only to be notified that I'd suffered a blowback.
Oh, because you didn't close your dampers.
Well, and I didn't have the blower on.
That too.
More to the point. Blower, damper, what are these things that aren't modeled on this early steam technology?
Blower's an artificial draft. Inside the smoke box up here, you'd have a ring with little nozzles on it pointed up out the stack, and that would be yet another appliance. You'd have a valve in the cap, and it was just a steam valve right off the steam dome, and the more the valves open, the more steam you're sending up the stack, and it creates a draft through the fire by pulling air through the doors, air through the bottom of the fire, through your grates, and out the tubes, and out the stack, and it keeps your fire burning. Dampers are on the side of your engine. Some American engines had them, some didn't. Some oil burners had them, some coal burners had them. It is kind of a piecemeal. I know for a fact it wasn't a thing on the narrow gauge. But dampers are basically something you use to. It's like a damper on your fireplace. You close the dampers, your fire goes out. You open your dampers, they get more air is coming through underneath your fire, and it burns hotter, brighter, better, cleaner. All of those kinds of good things.
Harder, better, faster, stronger.
Yes, that. And I have departed the iron ore mine, and I am downhill bound.
All right, then you're following me.
Alright, we're gonna have just a teensy weensy little bit of switching to do once we get in there. Set out these ore cars and one of the cabooses.
So you're gonna want to be lined for the runner, correct?
Yeah, for the long runner.
Yep. Can do.
And we were talking about drifting throttle before. So right now, you can see I have my throttle at 9%. I'm going to get that closed down to 1%. And I don't know if you can hear it. 2%. There's no longer an exhaust sound coming from the stack if I open up my cylinder cocks. Tiny bit of steam. Does that actually do? Yeah, so you see if I go down to 1%, it's even a smaller amount of steam, and it's just coming out. That's actually a realistic way of judging when you're in drifting throttle mode or not. And we're flying down the grade here, so I'm going to set up some brakes. Try and get us under control from becoming a runaway.
They still had speed caps in place.
They do. Though not downhill, only under power. So theoretically, if you blow
put
past
the
the
throttle
speed,
on,
you can blow past the speed cap, and the physics engine will cause you to jump off the tracks.
oh.
Yeah.
But if you put the throttle on, wouldn't that enable the speed cap?
No, because you're going downhill.
Oh.
Its own
Just
speed
like-
cap only applies under its own power on a flat. Interesting, right? The more you know.
Yes. Quite.
I got my drifting throttle set up. I got a little bit of brake.
And is it true that you never, again, IRL, that you never fully close your throttle unless you're stopped? But if you're
Correct.
drifting, you still keep it a little bit open?
Correct, and that's what we're just talking about, is I have my throttle open 1%, and if we look at the cylinder cocks, you can actually see that it's a small amount of steam coming out compared to when it's wide open. And that's how you'd be able to tell that you had what's called a drifting throttle. So it's open just enough to lubricate it and keep these snifters from seating, or from dropping. And you maintain that positive pressure, so that way you don't pull a vacuum in your what's called the steam chest, and that's the valve piston combination.
Okay. Well, I've made it to Plateau Station.
Copy that.
And
I'm on the.
I'm
coming down the 4%ers now.
I've already lined it to the runaround, or to, yeah, the long loop.
Copy that.
So you'll be set. Hope that you guys are enjoying our iron ore run this evening. And as always, if you have questions here on the Soken, Mohonk, and Western, we are more than happy to answer them. We will even give you truthful answers. That's a bonus. But we do it for you guys because you guys are worth it.
That's again, that's why we do this here at the Virtual Railroader Academy, in the Railroaders Play Railroads Online series. Everyone you hear playing here tonight is involved in railroading somehow, whether at a tourist museum or at railroad museums, tourist railroads, short lines. We're in the thick of it. We get how it works. We do it for a living or as a sadistic hobby. But we're here to answer questions and get the 101s out there. For how the hell does the railroad work and run?
And it is a fascinating piece of machinery, both in terms of the individual pieces of equipment as well as how a railroad as a whole system operates.
I thought you were gonna say it is a sadistic hobby.
Well, no, I was going to say that on that particular front, there's probably a whole seminar to be done about marketing ourselves appropriately, because I mean it has its sadistic elements, but the goal is to bring people in and see the joys and wonders, and then they can see the
I,
sadistic elements of it.
I'll tell you this: I can have a terrible day on the engine, but I still get off going like, I'll be having like a terrible time firing, and I'll be like, God, why do I do this? Like this is terrible. And then like I'll have like a really really good trip, and I'll be like, oh man, this is the coolest thing ever. I love this. So it's that balance of like it kicks your butt when it kicks your butt, but when it's not kicking your butt, it's the coolest thing in the world. And steam engines will kick your butt very hard if you let them. I am superstitious in that. People think I'm crazy. I'll walk onto an engine for the day and I'll pat the back wall of the cab and I'll say, "Good morning, engine. Good morning, engine 89." And I'll let the engine know, "Good morning. I'm happy to see you, and we're gonna have a good day." And it works. And people think I'm crazy for doing that, but it works, so it's not crazy.
Can't knock it if you haven't tried it.
Exactly.
And would you want to not try it? I think.
I used to badmouth an engine publicly. I no longer badmouth that engine because that engine used to kick my ass. Since I've stopped badmouthing it, it stopped kicking my ass. They know. They know.
I think not.
Oh yeah. Alright, so we're coming off the grade, and this is a little bit of an advanced train handling move. I've got my brake kicked off, and I've got my throttle opened. So that way, as we're coming off the grade, I am starting to slowly stretch my train as everything's hitting the flat. So, we're still on the hill, we're on the last 2 car lengths of it, and brakes off, and I'm working power. And now, we'll cheat, we'll go into the third person view, see where our train is, and yeah, we're gonna rip that throttle open even more. I'm not going to go throttle wide open through here because I know I'm coming into a station stop pretty soon. So I'm going to keep it nice and easy and controlled. And that's the keys here is you want to be in control, you want to be telling the train what to do, not the other way around. Tire's good, we're coming up to a station. Not quite yet. God, the train's heavier than I thought, so I'm going to give it more throttle. Just get it moving and rolling. Keep it rolling, I should say. That's the name of the game, is you want to keep everything smooth, get it rolling, keep your speed. Don't let it slow down, don't let it speed up. So as an engineer, you're always making small, minute changes. Unless you're someone who's been doing it for 50 years, and then you can set it up and forget it because it'll do exactly what you want. And it's insane about how you do that, and I don't understand it, and I want to know their sorcerer ways. Alright, so we're coming up to a yard. So old school, we whistle. Long, and a short.
And the helpers are both put away now, so you are more than set.
Copy that, helpers put away, clear into Plateau Yard. Again, this is Plateau Yard here on the AM and W. If you want to get an understanding of where that is, go ahead and type exclamation mark map into the chat, and it will and I'll give you a link for the map. And do go ahead and check that out. Kind of a custom-made map that I did to let me and everyone who plays on the railroad or otherwise know where the hell you are and what's what on the railroad, so that way you could find your way around. And all the fun names for the different locations.
We love to improvise our names.
We do, and some of the names change, like Creek Tank or whatever it is. Tank Creek, Creekless Tank, Waterside. I don't know. But that name changes like on the daily depending on who's talking. All right, I'm gonna ease my throttle off. And set up a little bit of brake, and we're gonna do a thing called working against the brake or power braking.
I am refueling this. I keep thinking that we're gonna run out of cordwood here, and then it keeps replenishing on me, as if to say, "Ha! You thought I was done, but actually, there's more in store."
Yes. So sorry, we're power braking. So we're running a little bit of brake and powering against it. And the theory being that you get your brake set up correctly, you get your power set up correctly. So that way when you shut off the throttle, you just coast to a nice gentle stop. And you wouldn't do this with just an engine brake. You'd want to do this with car brakes, because see those silver things on the wheels? Those are actually tires. So you can heat those up and expand them by running the brakes against them. And they can heat up and expand so much they just pop off of the wheels. So you don't want that to happen, so you wouldn't do that. But in these cases, it's fine. You're not gonna hurt anything. At least until they add wear and tear to the game, and then it will hurt something, and then you won't want to do it. But you know we're
Yeah.
not there yet.
Power sliding,
Pretty much.
especially with good old Betsy, the 040 Porter.
Oh yeah, Did you see the video of the new stuff where you could actually slide the engines now in the new update that's yet to
Yeah.
come out? That's gonna
Yep.
be fun.
Yes, that will be loads of fun. I look forward to when they can implement sparks.
Oh,
So
that'll be
you're
great.
sliding and you see the sparks being kicked up as a result. It's insane. The math comes to, so one of the reasons the rail transportation is so effective is that essentially the surface area between every contact point, so every wheel touching the rail, if you added up the surface area for a full-length freight train, comes to about the size of a dime. There's so little contact between rail and wheel.
I did not know that. I did not know that fun fact.
That's why it's such an efficient mode of transportation, because you have such a low coefficient of friction.
I knew steel on steel is basically frictionless. I didn't realize the surface area added up to be so tiny.
Yeah, it's incredibly small.
And this is where knowing your route comes in handy. I set up too much brake too soon. So in the real world, I probably would have kicked that off and opened up my throttle some more.
Do you need that switch line for the main or for the siding?
That's gonna stay. Oh, yeah, for the siding.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay. And so we're putting,
Oh.
obviously we're putting the hoppers on one of the sides to be able to go down the smelter branch. What about the flats?
Flats we're gonna take with us, and then just gonna leave the caboose. We're gonna drop a caboose on the way by, right in front of the climax. Or yeah, right in front of the climax. We'll just cut one of the cabooses off on the fly. And then whoever is doing schmelter duty next can take care of that.
Gotcha.
I can keep pulling up. I have plenty of room. I forgot what switch we were going to. This yard has changed so much, I still forget what's what.
It has evolved tremendously. I mean, the operations of the railroad in general have.
Yeah, that too. Actually, you know what? As we're leaving, we'll fly a caboose into the switch in front of the climax.
I think that makes the greatest degree
Yeah.
of sense.
Yeah. Cause I think the next train through here is a coal mine bound train, and they got cordwood to drop off, so they'll need to come through on the long siding.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, as we're ignoring steam engines for a bit and talking operational stuff. Alright, I'm gonna bring it to a stop here. Grab a whole lot of brake. I'm still sliding. Grab some tender brake. Which, that shouldn't do anything, because the engine and the tender should be connected with air, because there's air tanks on the tender. So, yes.
Plot hole.
Huh?
Plot holes.
Yes.
So are the hoppers going in one track and the flats in another?
No, we're taking the flats with us.
So the hoppers and flats are all going on one yard track then?
The hoppers are going on one track. We're leaving the flats on the long siding.
Oh,
Flats are going to come with us to Hill Valley. Hoppers are going to stay here.
okay. Well, I have now uncoupled the flats.
Copy that. Flats are uncoupled.
And there should still be enough room to get by there. Yep, we've got enough room. Hello, Luca. Are you looking for a lap or are you looking for food?
Yes, both.
No, he's definitely not looking for a lap. And
Nope.
definitely looking for food.
Only food.
Half car,
Half.
truck.
Truck.
You're in the clear.
Far enough.
Good to shove. Which track do you want to put these on?
The middle one of the stub tracks between the flats and the other hoppers.
Gotcha. You're lined.
Copy that, lined.
For those of you joining us tonight, be curious to know maybe what part of the world you hail from, roughly speaking, of course. Love to know where y'all are tuning in from. You got any good tourist railroads, museums around you?
Yeah, let us know. Always like traveling to a new spot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always looking for a train to ride when I'm on vacation.
I'm always looking for travel recommendations as well, especially if I'm in unfamiliar territory.
Mm-hmm.
Love discovering hidden gems. I was traveling to Texas some months back and stumbled on a trolley museum in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Ooh.
Neat gem of a place. And speaking of cats, they had what I consider to be the largest assortment of cats I've ever seen at any sort of railroad museum. I mean, you see these places that have social media cats that have, one or two cats. These guys had 25, and that's not an exaggeration. You could see them lounging around. Anywhere in here is good to drop these guys.
All right, on the stop.
And the pins pulled as well. Yeah, they had but I mean, they were all outdoor cats, so it wasn't a hoarding thing. They had plenty of space to roam around. I'm sure there wasn't a mouse in sight for miles.
No, cats are good at that, especially at railroads.
Yeah.
They also use your wherever you dump your ash as a litter box. So there's also that.
That makes sense.
It's a similar enough consistency.
Well, this is going to time into a nice run of things.
It really is.
And I'll get your switch. Oh, you got your own.
Yeah, I got my own switch. I didn't know where you were.
I was riding the boards.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're doing the fun thing. That's riding the front pilot. Because you can only ride these things that are called switching steps. When you're going So if we're going forwards, I could theoretically ride the step here. If we're going backwards and we had those steps here, I could ride here. Because it's illegal to do that if you're going, if I'm going forwards, I can't ride the front because then I can get run over and die. Common theme amongst railroading here is not dying.
Yep. Good theme.
Generally a good thing, yes, I agree. But that is riding the front switching steps. Like if you're cutting away from a cut of cars, you can hop on that switching step, pull your cut lever, give your engineer the backup hand signal, and cut away, and then just ride that step. And it's kind of the coolest thing in the world. It's a lot of fun.
One car.
One.
Truck. Pins in.
Hands in.
And handbrakes are knocked off, so you're gonna pull out of the.
Here we go back.
I will keep wanting to call this Pleasant Valley because I'm getting Plateau and Hill Valley.
I'm gonna have to make a Pleasant Valley on the new version, on the V2 version once they're splines.
And then I'll start calling it Plateau. And I'm on the rear caboose, so once you get up to speed, I'll cut away and then park it in front of the.
Copy that. I got the throttle ripped wide open. I'm gonna run ahead and get the switch for to cross back over to the main. And hopes that I can beat the train there before we hit it. But yeah, viewers, you'll know that when we're doing those switching moves, I was kind of pulling the throttle out, releasing it, and then grabbing it and shoving it back in. And that's simulating a thing you do in the real world where you give it a puff of steam and let it do its thing before you give it more power. And it's a way of controlling your train. And just giving it just what it needs at any given time.
I like that idea. Giving it just what it needs when it needs it.
Exactly.
You're not giving it too much, but you're listening to it.
Exactly.
Just like we must listen to ourselves in life.
Are we going to be philosophical like your stream last night?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very philosophical model railroading stream.
It's a 2-for-1 deal.
And viewers out there, if you don't recognize that voice of Nick Ozerak of the Roundhouse podcast fame, now you do. And do check out his latest series. What is it called?
What makes this layout great?
What makes this layout great?
We do I'm thinking, so what makes this layout great is primarily edited videos where we analyze model railroad track plans from an operational standpoint and see how to get the most out of the space that works for you by analyzing what other plans and folks have done. And when I'm not releasing those episodes, I'm live streaming and talking about, and we're actually building track plans in train simulation. And I should specify the edited episodes are filmed in train simulators as well. It's all based around train simulation to be able to illustrate the concepts and play with them and have fun, like we're doing tonight.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I might name the live streams uh, like Let's Build with Nick or something like that, just because I find myself getting tongue-tied over explaining the difference between what makes this layout great, edited episodes versus the live streams.
Yeah.
But I don't want to have too many names either, so
I'm running.
balance.
I'm very slow along the main line if you want to run and hop back on.
I am running. If you look at the low line towards the smelter, you will see.
Oh,
me.
I'm just above you.
Yep, exactly.
I can see you.
Hi. Good.
Well, let me know when
But
you're
yeah.
back on. I'll rip that throttle open and we'll get out of here in a hurry. If you can get back on from down there.
Oh yeah. That won't be a problem. Because I'm gonna run under this bridge, and then I'm gonna loop around, and there I am. I'm gonna sit in the caboose.
Alright. And 2 short whistle blasts to acknowledge he's on. 2 short whistles is, that just means yes, I understood. And now we have a light enough train where I can start bringing this back. And in the real world, you'd hear the exhaust get softer. And you can hear it's not doing that here. You know, the pressure gauge doesn't move when you're working steam, so you can't even tell we're working less steam. I have a feeling that my fire is out. Which it is.
That happened to me today too. Happens to the best of us.
Yeah, we call it pulling a Casey around here. So I'm actually going to ease off on the throttle. And as I bring my throttle in, I got to bring my reverser down. And it's this throttle reverser balance. Hey, thanks Pilot for Piccadilly for a follow. Much appreciated. So it's this reverser throttle balance that you want to get. Kind of the theory of it all is you want to have your throttle all the way out and control your speed with your reverser. So right now I'm just working a little bit of throttle while we hop into this menu here. You can see our water temperature is very cold. It doesn't start boiling till 100 degrees because this is all in Celsius. So just going to leave that alone for now.
Something I've often wondered about is why is it that it's more beneficial to be controlling speed with the reverser than it is with the throttle?
So, it's, you know, this comes back to the analogy of it's like driving a stick shift. Is it better to do 70 miles an hour in first gear or sixth gear? And that's, you know, the answer is you want to do 70 miles an hour in sixth gear, not first gear, because in first gear you'll blow up your engine. Well, we're not going to blow up a steam engine if we're doing full speed all the way in the corner, but it's more fuel efficient as we bring this closer towards center. So we're using less steam, we're relying more on the expansive property of steam in order to power our train. We are making less work for our firemen because they need to shovel less coal, they need to boil less water, and it becomes a fuel efficiency thing.
But if you were slowing down, so if you were going from like a 50 mile per hour zone to a 30, why would it be more beneficial to, now let's say you're on a flat or something where you don't have to use brake to get down, why would it be more beneficial to pull out, so going forward, so push out the reverser more than it would be to ease back on the throttle? Or would you do both?
You use them in tandem. I say the theory is you bring the throttle all the way out and control your speed with your reverser, but in reality you're working both in together. As you bring back your reverser or hook it up, you get you start increasing your steam chest pressure. Because you're letting less steam in, so it reads it as you're inputting, let's say you're inputting 200 psi into your valve, but you're only letting in, I don't know, 100 psi at a time when you're hooked up. So your steam chest pressure actually rises because there's more pressure backed up in there waiting to get used, and that back pressure is, oh god, this is hard to explain without being able to demonstrate it with a gauge. So let's say I'm in the corner and I have my throttle like that, and that's only working 80 pounds. That's working like 20 pounds of pressure. If I bring my reverser up like this and hook it up, now all of a sudden I'm working 100 pounds of pressure because there's more steam backed up in the steam chest waiting to get used. Expansive properties are great for going faster. Volume properties are great for going slower. So kind of the saying that we use is go slow, go long, go fast, go short. And you use them coherently. Like working in towards a stop. Let's say I got my throttle wide open, I'm hooked up. Realistically, probably something like that. Not quite dead center, but a little bit forward of it. And as I'm trying to slow down for a stop, I'll bring my throttle in a little bit. So that way I'm starting to use less steam, and I'll bring my reverser a little bit longer. And so that way I'm kind of letting the slack settle, and I'm letting the train bunch itself up together, and ease off a little bit more, and bring that down, and, ease off until I hear the exhaust go quiet, and then drop it down, and then finally set myself up for like drifting. And then I can start using brake to slow myself down. Or if I was that's for a stop. If I was slowing down for a new speed zone, I'd bring my reverser to what I thought would be a good point for it, and set my throttle up for where it needs to be, and just use a little bit of brake and kind of pull against that brake to slow myself down, and then maintain that speed. It's a juggling act, really. You're thinking about two different things at the same time, and your reverser position also depends on how much rod noise you have. So if you're hearing pounding of the rods, that means you're not hooked up high enough. And if you're hearing the rods slapping, that means you're hooked up too high. And I wish I could accurately describe how those sound different, but they are. And the only way I can describe it is, I can't describe it. You gotta hear it, and to be given a audible example.
Need sound recordings of each.
Yeah.
You'll have to the next time you're running your place, you'll have to take some audio recordings and be like, so you can deliberately like simulate each, or well, not even simulating, you'd be recreating each condition, then have audio of it, like here's the same engine under this condition versus that condition.
Yeah. And that's one of the how do I want to say this? I mean, I wish I could. I'm not allowed to have any recording devices on me, but I can get a friend to come up and record them. And it may be good educational stuff for training purposes as well.
Well, that, or I mean, if it's not, if it's uh, if it's mounted, like if you're not using the device, like you had a Zoom recorder and you set it up before you move, is it still technically
It's
considered
a
like
clock
you're
in
using?
issue.
Oh, it's when you're on the clock. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So when I
Gotcha.
clock in, I'm no longer allowed to have my electronic device on me, lest I face like a $50,000 personal fine.
Right.
And that includes anything that can record pictures or video digitally. So yeah, I need a friend to come up and mount the device and manage it.
But does pictures or video, does that include audio?
Oh, pictures, video.
only?
Yeah, I forgot about audio. All of those
Oh, okay.
things.
All anything electric. I gotcha.
Electronic devices. A Fitbit counts as an electronic device.
Huh. Fascinating.
Because it has the ability to connect to your phone, which is the railroads theoretically don't want you having a digital watch.
Huh.
Because digital watches can be distracting.
Well, time to get out that good old Illinois 1920 pocket watch then.
Yeah, where's my my nice pocket watch? Yes. So that's a little bit on the reverser and throttle. I wish I could simulate more and really talk about it more, because it's a cool nuance to really be able to get right. And when you get it right and get your transitions right from power to drifting, or running hooked up all the way in what's called the company notch, because it's the most fuel efficient place to be running, to running a little bit longer, it's a cool nuance to really be able to pick up on. And I hope it gets simulated in the game at some point.
It'd be nice to see. Well, there's a lot of nice things to look forward to in the future of this
Yes,
game.
yes, and this game's gonna provide for some great teaching opportunities down the road as it evolves and we continue doing more of these.
Run ahead of you here, and what arrival track do you want to?
Let's see, where are we
set
supposed to be
on?
coming in on? 2, so second one in from the outermost track.
Okay.
Are you able to get ahead of me? Oh yeah, you are. I see you there.
Yep. I'm ahead of the curve today. This is the third time you've been like, "Are you ahead?" Oh yeah, you're ahead. I feel on top of the ball.
Now, I do want to plug out there for anyone watching that keep an eye out. We are going to be putting out a Facebook page, hopefully sometime this week, for you to follow along for more updates, and probably a YouTube channel as well to post these live streams archived up there to continue watching. So keep an eye out for those. Those are going to be coming out shortly. As always, once we have a Facebook up there, or YouTube up there, drop us a comment. Let us know what you'd like to see, what you'd like to learn about that we didn't cover. Keep an eye out. We are going to be doing some more fun-themed events. We're going to be doing a Railroaders Play Railroads Online Drunk event coming up probably in April at some point, since March is nearly over already, surprisingly. And keep an eye out. We're going to be doing some fun things like that. And, we look forward to your feedback and what you want to learn, because that's really what this is about. It's what you guys want to learn.
I brain farted. Which rival track did you say again?
2.
2. Okay,
Yeah.
2 it is.
So you saw I closed my throttle a little bit, dropped my reverser down, closed my throttle a little bit more, and grabbed a little bit of brake to bring us down to what's quote-unquote yard speed. And this is about, I don't know, 8 miles an hour or so. And we can spend time next stream, and I'll make a note of it, talking about how to judge speeds without a speedometer, because that is a skill in its own right, and a crazy skill at that.
It is a crazy skill.
It's, steam engines didn't have speedometers.
Yeah, and me, Mr. Perfectionist, anytime I'm driving in a sim, it's like, oh, the speed limit is 30 miles an hour. That means I have to do 30. So I've got my electronic heads-up display up showing me what speed I'm doing, so I'm sure I'm doing the right one, or
Yeah.
that I'm not speeding.
Yeah, nope, we don't have those in game here.
Nope.
Stuff like 611, those had speedometers. But most steam engines didn't. It was really only your crack stuff, your express stuff, that had speedometers. Everything else, it was just look out the window. How fast does that look? Yeah, looks like the right speed.
Because you didn't have you didn't have black box recordings, you didn't have
And
inward facing cameras and the stuff to like ensure you adhered exactly to 30.
there's a I hear another train arriving.
I do too.
A speedometer is kind of a stupid symbol on steam engines. It's usually a pulley around the tender that hooks up to a device that measures RPM, which gives you your speed. And that's how stupid simple it can be. And that's how it worked on most steam engines that had them. But at last, they were definitely not a thing during this time period. And yes. So we're talking about power braking before. I've been working a small set. Close my throttle, and you can see we're easing to a nice gentle stop. And grab a little bit more brake. And just ease on down. Nice and gently. A little more. Another bite. And we're here. Blow our whistle, let everyone know we're stopped. So crew can start setting up handbrakes or discharging passengers if we're a passenger train. And we're talking about wanting to keep everything bunched. If we come and look at the cars, look at how all the slack is bunched in on them. That's how you know you had a nice smooth stop. And I'm gonna cut our engine away.
Oh yeah, there is somebody else doing something else.
Yeah, it's Pilot. He's hanging out one of the other channels.
Cool.
Like the first time a Heisler's ever been down that way. Spaceman.
Oh, right, to the south end, right.
Yeah.
That's cool to see.
Alright, well, if anybody out there has any more questions, we're coming up on our 3-hour end time here. Let us know in chat, send us a message, send us an email, a letter, what have you, a Twitter. We don't have a Twitter yet, I shouldn't pitch that. But let us...
if at the very least for the time being, you're welcome to reach out to me and I can forward things along to the team as a whole. My email is nickozrak@theroundhousepodcast.com, or you can just go to theroundhousepodcast.com. There's a contact us page there, and you can reach out to me/us through that way as well.
Yeah,
for the time being.
We'll probably be setting up a Facebook this week and getting it out there. So keep an eye out for that. Like, follow, subscribe. Sasquatch, yes, moguls are the best. Ninja, I'll have you know, since you weren't on tonight, we didn't derail anything. Shh. No one tell him.
What? Oh, I heard there's so many moguls in this game.
We took a group photo the other day and found out there were 11 moguls on my map, and I don't know how I got that many, but I do. But thank you everyone for tuning in. If there weren't any derailments, I didn't miss anything.
Oh,
It's amazing.
replay, and you'll see. You'll find out one way or another.
That is amazing. I love it. Um,
But we appreciate you guys for joining us tonight and look forward to having you join us once again next week.
yes, every Friday at 7:30 to 10:30 p.m. Let us know if you want to see us at different times. We could probably do like a more casual version at some. We could probably do a more casual one of these during the week where we're doing less instructing and more just running of trains and catching up on our casual conversation. Let us know if that's something you're interested in. Happy to do more of these if people are interested. But thank you for watching. I'm Casey. Right over
I'm
there,
Nick.
that's Nick. And this is the Virtual Railroading Academy. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.